What's going on, everybody? Feder here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. And today's video is a special one for several reasons. But the first reason is, well, as some of you might know, I started off 3D printing with an Ender 3. And this machine actually marks the 50th machine that I'm reviewing for this channel in one way or another, showcasing whatever it might be. This is number 50. I've had well over 50, but some of them are either still boxed, being prepared for something else, or I just never ended up reviewing them, but I have had personal experience with it. That's kind of my goal of the channel, is to just see as many machines as I possibly can, get my hands on them, to really see what everyone is doing, what everyone's company's takes are on different things. So this is number 50 because, well, I started with an Ender 3 like I mentioned, and I actually think this is a really important machine for the entire genre. There's so many Ender 3s, it's really hard to keep up with the naming conventions, to be honest with you, but this SE model is special because they've taken what they've learned from the Ender 3 series from all of this time, and also what they've learned from the K1 series machines behind me, the K1 and the K1 Max. The reason why I mention those is on those machines, for a new beginner, if you have the money to be able to afford them, all you have to do, it's a slice A file, is to drop it into your slicer, select the machine, essentially pick which type of filament you have loaded in, hit slice, and they're ready to go. Everything is pretty much automated. They've taken those systems, some of the systems from those machines, and put them into this one, and this machine retails under $200. This machine specifically was sent to me by Per Gear, and they have included a 6% off coupon. I will link that down below. You can also grab it on Amazon from them as well. Now, they're not paying me for this review whatsoever. I'm not supposed to say anything special. They've literally just sent me this for a review and given me a discount to be able to include the link down in the description. So it's a win-win for everyone involved. I get to showcase this. I don't have to say anything specific, and well, we all get to see what's inside this box, what it comes with, how this thing assembles, what's included on the SD card, and how the thing prints, which is the goal of this channel and the goal of these videos. So let's get into it, shall we? All right, I got my blade. Let's unbox. All right, first up we got, looks like our manual, some stickers, and a declogger device. We have our toolkit, an extra nozzle, which is one of those Creality nozzles that's a kind of an in-between size. We have a full-size SD card, some tools, some snips. I see some hardware that we're gonna need, and a little tiny bit of filament. We have our power cable, we have the screen, we have our spool holder. All right, now I think the best case is I'm gonna have to put this down on the floor and get these parts out onto the table so we can all see them a little bit better. Okay, so here is the upper half of the machine. And there's a bunch of really interesting things that I will go over a little bit later when we assemble it. But just as a sneak peek, we have a dual belted Z coming off of one motor here. We have a direct drive extruder, and it's using the Sprite extruder. Most impressively though, they have these new custom extrusions that aren't square anymore. They're kind of in a triangle shape, which means they should theoretically be stiffer than any other Ender before them. So that's really interesting as well. They have a new mechanism for how the X-axis rides here. Yeah. All right, so we'll take a little bit of a closer look at all this stuff when we assemble it. Let's get the base out. All right, and I think this is the final thing in the box. We have our base of the machine. The thing to note here is this thing definitely looks much more modern than your typical Ender. It no longer looks boxy. It has this injection molded plastic, and I just noticed just how smooth the bed rides on these rails. So typically an Ender has a single extrusion down the middle with wheels that go into the sides, and that's what the bed slides on. But now it looks like they have put it on bearings on linear rails, which should technically be an improvement on the bed. I do see that this uses a magnetic sheet. However, this is not a PEI sheet. These things do wear out rather quickly in my experience, but it's not a bad thing to get started on. Another thing that I quickly noticed is just like on the K1, it is definitely using their alignment system to get these things on and off really quickly. And just as a test, this is Creality's new PEI sheets for the K1, and just as expected, it works perfectly on these machines as well. One of the things to note is you can always take out these screws and put on any single sheet that you might want. There's actually a really nice mod by Randy May where you can do these two little printables that get put onto the back side. They'll let you slide in any single sheet that you want and still give you some alignment points. So not a bad surface to start out with, but I would definitely recommend a PEI sheet as an upgrade. All right, let's get this thing assembled and, well, let's take an even closer look. All right, so there it is. The assembly was an absolute breeze. It's definitely amongst the easiest to assemble, at least of this type of machine. I did notice there are belt tensioners on both sides, even though they aren't knobs. There is just an Allen screw on each side here, so you can tension the belts. There's a way to tighten and loosen the bed as well, right underneath it here. And there's an eccentric nut on the back of the head here. Mine were a little bit too tight. I had to loosen them a little bit. But otherwise, just to assemble, you need 3 bolts on each side underneath. That's why you guys saw me pull this thing right off the table and go from the bottom. Otherwise, it's pretty solid. The bed slides really, really smoothly. That's definitely a key takeaway from the assembly, is it just feels smoother than what I'm used to, I guess. Otherwise, the tool head just gets plugged in with a ribbon cable. The ribbon cable just gets tucked away right over here. There's a nice little kind of sheath over here on the cable that shows you exactly what to do. You have to plug in the steppers. They're labeled very clearly. It is definitely an easy machine to assemble. One thing to note on mine, I did have to switch down to 110 volts on the back here, but if you look at the instructions, it tells you to do that anyway. One of the other things I noticed that's kind of departure from the other machines is on top here, the filament spool that's attached usually goes onto T-nuts, and you kind of have to fish around where they go and choose a position. Here, there is already determined spots for it, so you don't have to do anything. It makes assembly even easier and even more obvious. Outside of that, there's not much to it. It is a really basic machine, very easy to get up and together. So I guess let's take a look at what's powering this thing. We got the tool head to take a look at, and then we got the wiring underneath and the main board to look at. So why don't we start on the bottom? All right, had to bring you in a little bit closer so you can get the deal here. So if you guys are familiar with the Ender 3 series, you can already tell just how different this is by the casing alone. It's kind of like a unibody chassis instead of just extrusions. And I'm assuming this is much easier for them to build and make. But right off the bat, we have the board right over here, and you notice the vastness of the space here. So if you really wanted to maybe do something like Octoprint or something along those lines, I'm not sure how this board takes any of that stuff quite yet, but there's definitely some room for things to do in here. There's also a metal bracing that kind of braces both the sides together, and off of that we have a Creality branded power supply here. It does say that it's a 350, and everything looks to be okay on this end. The wire management is nice and neat. Let's take a closer look at the board itself, if there's anything specific that I can see here. It is their own branded board. It does use a large size SD, a standard size SD. There are some extra slots here. Can I see what they're labeled as? This says Z, and I can't quite see what the rest are. I'll have to see if I can find more information on this particular board online. But yeah, it looks like we have ferrules on all of the power connectors. Things that don't have ferrules, like plugs, are hot glued to keep them all in place. So it does look like a nice and tidy scenario, and it does look like a custom board just for this machine. All right, not much to say here without looking a little bit further at some schematics, but I do see a much larger fan for cooling, which is definitely welcome. That means it's going to be a little bit more quiet. It is a Creality brushless branded fan here. Looks to be really well built from here. Well, let's put this thing back together and let's take a look at the extruder. Bottom assembled, back on top. Looks like, just like some of their other machines, this is a really similar form factor, and I do gotta say, it does look really nice. I want to take a closer look under here, and it looks like we have screws on the sides that get it undone. So let me take those off and let's see what's under here. All right, so here is what we have hiding underneath here. We have a Sprite extruder, which is definitely a great extruder. They've definitely proven themselves on that with a pancake stepper here. We have a CR Touch that's mounted directly to here, which is nice. There is a sister board with all the little connectors on it. They are these smaller connectors, kind of like the K-series machines use, which does make it slightly more of a pain to modify or fix if something goes wrong, but at least the wires aren't running very far, which is nice. It looks like the X just has a simple switch on it for homing, so that's nice and easy. The hot end is a little bit more interesting. It does look like it's pretty specific to this machine or maybe something similar. It is not their typical Ender style hot end. It does look like it has a little tiny 25mm fan on it. And let's see what we see under the sock here. All right, some pretty standard affair. It does look like it's one of those slightly longer modules that Creality has been using, where the nozzle is not quite a Volcano, but not quite an M8 or a V6. It's their own proprietary size, which is not necessarily a bad thing because now there is a readily available aftermarket for them. But that is definitely a beefy block for sure. The heat brake, let me see if I can zoom in on that. The heat brake does look like it is PTFE lined, but that's okay. This is a very inexpensive machine, and if this hot end is anything like Creality hot ends, you should be able to get some replacements for it. Okay, I'm going to put this back together because if you're a beginner, you're not digging in here unless there's some kind of problem. And by the looks and the feel of this machine, I don't think there will be too many of these, especially because they've used this setup on other machines and should be pretty good. Okay, I'm going to put this... Oh, one more thing. It looks like the cooling is done just by a single, what are these, 4010s, I believe they're called, with a printed duct. You know, I have some reservations about that. Obviously, a little bit more cooling power would be nice, especially because this is going to be a PLA machine. But we're going to see how it works. I know a lot of machines in this genre for this price have this type of cooling and are perfectly fine. And I have years of experience with machines with single-sided fans like that that have been just fine. And the Sprite itself is usually okay. All right, let's put this back together. And let's see what the menus look like. Okay, let's take a look at the menu here. Let's do the peel. Nice. All right, so print should be pretty simple. This should be anything that's on the card. It looks like there might be nothing on it. Let me see if the card is inserted or not. That should be the nice click. Let's see. Okay, so there is one file, and it looks like it is the CAT model that all Creality machines practically come with. Okay, that's all right. We'll be printing that. Looks like right off the bottom here, we do have some basic information. We have the temperatures for everything, the extrusion, the speed, the fans, and the current Z height. Let's see what's under prepare. We have move. Okay, it's just gonna home, I guess. I didn't expect it to do anything when I clicked this button, but the machine is homing. I gotta say, it's extremely quiet. There's very little to no noise happening at the moment, which is nice. I'll go ahead and fast forward to this just because I want to see the rest of the menu. All right, there we go. Let's see what's next. We have disable steppers. Let's click it just so the machine can just sit. We have auto home. We have the current Z offset, which technically we shouldn't need to do. It should be automatic, but we'll take a look at how that works a little bit later. Let's see what's in the extrude menu. Okay, clicking extrude apparently go ahead, does the whole homing for me. Okay, I'll fast forward to this as well. Trim the filament at 45. Okay, interesting. So this is going to just walk us through actually putting in the filament because it looks like it is already heating the hot end. Is there a way for me to cancel this? No. So once you've clicked the menu item for extrude, it just does it. I've always been a critic of that. It's just bad user experience. For example, I was expecting to go into a menu. I wasn't expecting to click a button. And there's also no way to cancel it in case I misclicked. Like, technically speaking, I did because I thought it was a menu. So right off the bat, I do not like that user experience. I guess we might as well make the best of it and grab some filament. All right, let's do that. All right, so I have some filament loaded. I'll show that to you a little bit later. It looks like our menu here is saying push the filament to the bottom and click OK. I pushed it down, some white filament came out, which means they did test the machine, which is nice. I'm gonna click confirm. All right, the machine did extrude a little bit. Okay, now it is extruding a lot more, which is good. All right, there we go. So it extruded and then went right back to the menu. Once again, I would have liked to see buttons inside of these menus so that I could cancel or continue or to have some kind of input in this process. Instead, it just kind of did it while looking through a menu. So other ways to interact here in this menu is to prepare PLA, TPU, cooldown, or select a different language. While in here, we might as well prepare for PLA. Looks like we click it. There's no confirmation, but we do see the temperatures go to 260, which is good. All right, let's go to back. Let's see what we have in control. We have temperature, motion, storing configuration, reading configuration, editing the leveling data, reset. Let's go into temperatures just to take a peek. All right, here we can set the nozzle temperature and bed temperature, the fan speed. We can change our PLA settings or TPU settings. Set PID manually, that's nice. And we have auto PID, which I will do before doing any kind of printing. I'm assuming based on our previous experiences, this is actually a button and not a menu item like it seems. So I'm not gonna press that because I just wanna look at the menus at the moment, but good to know that that's in here, and I will be doing PID before printing. All right, and then motion, let's see what's in here. So we can set our max speed, max accel, and our steps. That's actually pretty nice. I didn't expect them to give you steps, but that's good. That means we can calibrate. All right. And under leveling, I'm also going to guess that by pressing this, it is going to start doing its thing. Let's see. Yep, I was right. Creality is making these things really, really simple, and I guess the menus are pretty much what you see is what you get style, where when you're clicking the text, that is the thing that it will do. So I don't get to see what it's doing. I'm guessing that it's doing the heating the nozzle at the moment. It is. And now the machine is moving. How about I show that to you guys? All right, so far we do have an indication now on the screen that the nozzle is heating. It is blinking blue, whereas before I didn't think there was any kind of indicator. So that's nice, you get to see what it's actually doing. So it looks like it's going to heat the nozzle, then it's going to clean the nozzle, and if that's anything like the K1 series, it's going to basically touch the nozzle down, it's going to start cooling the hot end, and as it cools, it is going to very lightly drag it across the build plate, essentially cleaning the nozzle. And then it's going to use that nozzle to set automatic Z offset, which is very nice because that has always been a massive hurdle in setups of 3D printers. So if you can handle that, that would be very nice. So let's see how it does that. All right, so what that actually did was it essentially found the where the bed is, then it went over to the side, and like I said, it used that corner in the front there and used the load cell that's underneath that bed to touch physically with the nozzle the two spots on the bed, and then clean the nozzle off. And what that does, just like on the K series machines, is that allows this thing to calculate its own Z offset so that you don't have to mess with that at all. So now what it's doing is it's doing a bed mesh. I know you guys can't see the screen. Actually, let me show it to you right now. Here we go. It's doing the bed mesh, and it's showing us all of the actual readings from the mesh. It's looking not too bad, and it's actually going relatively quickly. The whole process is technically a little bit slow, but since you're not doing anything yourself and letting the machine do it all for you, that is not necessarily a bad thing. So let's see what we see here. It looks like that corner does have a slightly larger dip, and it did show in blue there, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem, especially because that is the only point that that it noticed that was a little bit low. I'm assuming that's going to be just fine in practice. So let's see what else it does. I did also notice that towards the top here, it does say what it's actually doing. Before I was a little bit confused. It does say it. There you go. It's confirmed. And let's just hit, oh right, it's not a touchscreen. Let's hit confirm. Okay, and I did notice, remember, if you guys remember, if you go here, there was a store configuration. Let's just go ahead and do that just to make sure it is all good. So there you go. Our Z offset is set. Our bed is meshed. Technically speaking, we should be able to print. I did throw in some Creality rainbow silk filament in here. So we should be off to the races. Let's go ahead and print the cat, and I'll show you how that starts and how it ends. While our print is starting here, let me just show you this screen as well because it's kind of important. This is the screen you'll see when the machine is starting. We have tune, pause, and stop. These two are pretty obvious, but let's see what's in tune. We can change our print speed, our nozzle temperature, our bed temperature, our fan speed. We can change the Z offset, which is actually kind of nice in case something isn't quite right. So it looks like everything we need is right here. We have our printing time, how much time is remaining, and it looks like it is doing, it's doing what the K1 series does, where when it needs to heat up, because it looks like the bed is at 60, but the hot end is not. It goes to the bed, goes to the lower corner to get that heat from the bed, and goes and heats up before it prints. All right, I'm gonna set the camera up, and I'm gonna let this thing go. All right. Let's see it. All right, I figured I'd show this. This is a real-time printing. It's actually no slouch. It's printing kind of quick. I did notice all of this updated. It looks like we have a little bit over 3 hours and 30 minutes left, 3:41 to be exact. It's about 6 minutes into the print, but it's definitely going faster than I expected, which is nice. It's not blazing speed like the other machines, but at this price point, this easy to set up, I have literally done nothing except for click a few buttons and put some filament in. So far so good. Let's see how this test print comes out. Well, the print is done, and it is honestly looking pretty good. You know, it's silk filament, so it's not very forgiving, and it actually printed much faster than I expected. Earlier it said it was going to take a little over 3 hours. Well, more than a little over 3 hours, but it took an hour 25 minutes to print. Not too bad. All right, next up, let's slice some of our own files using Creality Slicer, and let's see how those do, and I'll see you guys back at the table. All right, so several things. One, this print, after 9 hours 44 minutes. Looks incredible for what this is and just how complicated this particular Dragon model is. Now, that's the positive. This thing did really well with this. I'm very happy with it, and I wanted to print another one. Now, the thing that I'm very unhappy with is this build plate. I've never liked these in the first place, and well, because you don't adjust anything on this machine, it does everything for you. You would figure that it would bond to this thing perfectly, but it does indeed bond way too well. And this is silk, so it is pretty much fused on here. When I pull this, I hear cracking and breaking, and it just doesn't sound very happy no matter how much I flex. So right off the bat, my suggestion would be to get a PEI sheet with this machine. And my suggestion to Creality, if you're watching, I would definitely suggest upgrading this machine to PEI so that to save newcomers the hassle of dealing with this surface. I'm definitely going to end up breaking this model because just how complicated it is and just how stuck this is. I'm going to do my best not to, obviously, but I'm going to change to PEI, and I'm going to print this again along with a few more dragons for Toys for Tots this year, and I'll let you guys know how it comes out. So far, the printer is doing really well. I just personally never liked this surface. Never had good luck with it either. All right, let's swap that out and let's print more. All right, same print. Let's see what it's like with PEI. Well, there's your answer. Just comes right off. Already articulated. Let's take a closer look. The Ender 3 V3 SE has entered the chat. Look at all of these amazing prints that have come off of this machine in just over a week. I have way more down here, as you guys saw. You've taken some of these off the build plate, but I have essentially just been printing absolutely non-stop. I don't think I have turned this machine off at all. And the TLDR is I have been just dragging in STL files, selecting that machine, and clicking slice, and that's it. This machine pretty much needs nothing to get going and printing aside from the assembly that you saw earlier in the video. And that, for $200, in my opinion, is very special. And I think it's worth chatting. During this entire process, I have tried really hard to dissect this thing and to get some cons going, right? What are the negatives of this? And I've come up with 3. Sometimes I do a review of a machine where my entire page is completely filled. And maybe it's because this thing is very simple. But that in itself, it might be a huge positive. Let's go over the negatives. The first one I've already mentioned. It's this build plate. This polycarbonate build plate is not going to cut it. I'm not a fan. If you're going to print silk filament especially, this is what it ends up being like. It's not a good look. PLA does seem to work fine. Regular PLA does seem to work okay, although even after just a print or two, you still get to see the previous print. And it's just not confidence inspiring for somebody new. In my opinion, something like this right here, I believe this was $12 on Amazon. I'm gonna have links down below. I think it was 12 bucks. It might be a little bit more, like between $12 and $15. Very inexpensive. And as you guys saw when I was pulling these prints off, they quite literally just fall off of this thing when you're ready. And in my opinion, that's key for a machine like this that's really inexpensive, that's meant for somebody getting into the hobby, or a kid, someone that doesn't necessarily want to tinker and mess with things. And I don't know, just something about this. Number one con, I really wish they would come with a PEI sheet. Maybe there's some kind of deal Creality can work out for some limited amount of time or something, or just swap it. They can't cost that much more. Either way, that's my gripe with the machine, the main one. The next one is some of the menu items, and I'll talk about the menu a little bit more in actually the pros. But one of the things that kind of irked me, as you guys saw when I was checking out the menus, some of the menu items are actually buttons. Most of the things you do in the menus are go to another sub-menu so that you can go through the settings. So just as an example, if you click leveling, you expect it to go to a leveling menu. And that maybe that's not the best example, but in some cases on this machine, you would click a category, but it's actually a button and it starts doing that thing without you being able to cancel. And because this thing is for somebody that's brand new and doesn't want to calibrate or need to calibrate, it'd be nice for that UI to be as simple as you would expect it to be. So if you're looking at a menu, you would expect the menu to take you to a page. So in the same example I was using, you would click leveling and it would take you to a leveling page where you can take care of leveling on that page, not do it right from the menu itself, if that makes sense. That's my number 2. And the third one I wrote is it only has a 4010 single cooling fan with a printed duct on the bottom. Now, it's kind of strange for them to include a 3D printed duct on the bottom, in my opinion, of this machine, because everything seems so well thought out and put together. Otherwise, it seems to be the only 3D printed part on here. So it's kind of strange that they did that. But the fan does seem to work perfectly fine, for the overhangs that I have tested and for really complicated articulated pieces like this. It's not a speed demon, and you can print faster on this, especially when using something like the Sonic Pad or their Nebula Pad that's coming out soon, although I haven't tested those things. I think it'll be okay, but the cooling is definitely lackluster on the machine, and I guess that's why maybe the KE exists, which is a very similar machine but can go a little faster. So we'll find that out in the future, but those are the 3 things that I could find. My only big gripe is this. After this, the rest just seem like I'm nitpicking. Let's move into the pros of the machine. The first one, and I have a star next to this one, is this is zero calibration printing. Very similar to the K1 and the K1 Max. They're top of the line flagship machines where a beginner can turn those things on and just start printing because you don't have to do anything. They calibrate themselves. This does that, and at a significantly lower price point, which got me excited. I'm legitimately excited that that's a thing. The next thing I have here is linear rods on the Y are super smooth. I gotta say, I've had plenty of experience with machines with linear rods like this, and this one, I'm not sure what kind of bearings they used. Maybe they're packed with grease more so than normal, but they are very smooth and enough for me to notice that that's a thing. So very nice. Clean and simple aesthetic. I know that might not mean anything to you, but if this is going to be somebody's first machine, and especially if they're younger or just getting in, having a machine that looks good is less intimidating and easier to get into for some people. Sometimes, at least I've noticed for new folks, when they look at something that looks complicated or looks like a big machine, if they're not into that, they get kind of pushed off of it. The first time some people see my Voron Trident, they're like, whoa, because it looks so, over the top, right? This is very slick looking. There's very little extrusion to even look at. The only one you really see is on the X. The other ones are custom or plastic molded. And it gives it a nice little simple, inexpensive look. And I think it matches this machine very well. This machine uses the Sprite extruder, which in my opinion is a great extruder. It's very compact, it's very capable, it's repairable, replaceable, whatever you might want. It has a very good mounting system. It makes it very easy to remove if you have some clog or something happen where you need to take it off. The extruder is definitely a huge plus that they included that on this machine. The UI is very easy to learn with calibrations like E-steps, speed, and acceleration. I think that it's really great that they ended up adding the ability to change your E-steps. I know that on machines where you can't change your E-steps, some filaments might be under or over extruding depending on what you're doing. And the fact that they gave you that ability, I know not everyone's going to use it, I think is a fantastic little add-on. And just like I mentioned, the UI has its downs, but the upside of the UI is that it's very clean and it's very minimal, and it seems to be pretty easy to learn. I think it's pretty sharp, although it could be a little bit improved like I mentioned before. The stock Creality slicer profiles are great. Like I mentioned at first, I have been printing all of these with just whatever the stock profile is. I have just selected this machine, I selected PLA, and that's it. I haven't done a single thing. The profiles seem to be spot on. And if you're new, you don't have to dive into the crazy world of slicer settings, at least right away. Very nice. One of the other things is it uses a full-size SD card. I know that's not major, but fumbling those little tiny SD cards can be a pain, so a full-size SD card is definitely always welcome. The other thing, I didn't write it, but I just kind of realized that some people might not even know this. The reason why it has a zero calibration printing experience is because the edge of the bed, which is solid, by the way, there's no springs, there's none of that nonsense. The edge of the bed has a load cell underneath of it, similar to how the K1 and the K1 Plus beds are, and it uses the actual nozzle to touch that part, and because of that sensor, it can do Z offset by itself. So because of that, there's no knobs. There's no using a piece of paper to calibrate. And what's funny is there's machines that are 10 times the cost of this one that require you to still use the paper test to set the Z offset. So I just think that that's wonderful, and I love seeing it at this low cost for an entry-level machine. I think that's going to make 3D printing easier to get into for everybody, and I personally really welcome that. You might be wondering, why am I only printing these type of items? That is because I'm printing things for Toys for Tots. We are doing it again. 3D Max has sponsored Toys for Tots for 3D Print SOS once again this year, and they are giving 60 spools of filament to us. 30 is going to go to the person that gives the most toys, followed by 20 and then 10. So massive amounts of filament that you can win for doing a good thing, and that is awesome. Last year we printed over 1,200 toys, and this year hopefully we will do a lot more than that. So we'll see where we go. All of the rules for that, all of the things that you need to do, everything that you need to know is down in our Discord. Our very own Zoomy is taking care of giving you all the rules, giving you example models, telling you exactly where to go, what to do, what to print. Everything that you need to know is in that Discord, in the community tab. All right, I think that's going to be all, and my closing statement is going to be that I'm really happy that Creality has chosen this direction and slightly less cookie cutter, and kind of made their own thing on a lot of this, and really, I think, has landed onto something. $200, completely zero calibration, super easy. Definitely going to be an easy recommendation for me. All right, that's it. That's all I got. All right, everybody, please use the links down below. I'll include some of the things like the PEI and links to this machine. A huge thank you to Per Gear for sending this to me to check out. All right, I'll see you all in the comments. Later.